but seldom, even at home, because I'm so little. I wear my high heels. I can't even reach my cabinets unless I put my
Dolly Parton was supposed to be giving a simple interview, another charming conversation about music, memories, and her 7 decades under the spotlight. But at 79, the Queen of Country suddenly leaned in, smiled that unmistakable Dolly smile, and dropped a confession that froze the entire studio. She admitted there were 7 legendary artists she had been intimately involved with. Men whose names shaped American music. Men the world never imagined she had crossed that line with. The room went silent. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate, as if afraid to miss a word. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't scandal. This was Dolly finally pulling back the curtain on secrets she had guarded for a lifetime. And the first name she revealed was the one nobody dared to guess. And it all begins with a man in black. He entered her story like a thunderclap. Johnny Cash, the man in black, wasn't just a legend. He was a storm wrapped in a silhouette, a presence that could quiet a room before he ever spoke. When Dolly first stood near him, she felt the air change, as if his darkness carried its own gravity. He was intensity in human form, a man built of secrets, guilt, faith, fire, and every contradiction a woman should run from, but never could. Dolly didn't run. She leaned in. Their moments were rare, stolen between touring schedules and the restless chaos of Johnny's life. But each one was unforgettable. His voice alone could unravel her. That deep, cracked whisper that felt like a confession and a temptation all at once. To Dolly, he was danger, desire, and vulnerability braided together. A man who could love as fiercely as he destroyed. And even decades later, when she spoke his name, it still trembled with memory. Because Johnny was the kind of man who marked a woman for life. And after Johnny Cash's storm came a warmth she never saw coming. He arrived in her life like a sunrise after a long night. Willie Nelson wasn't a storm or a wildfire. He was warmth, ease, and the kind of gentle energy that could melt every sharp edge left behind by men like Johnny. With his braids, soft smile, and calm spirit, Willie carried a peaceful gravity that made Dolly feel seen in a way no spotlight ever could. He didn't chase, didn't press, didn't try to impress. He simply was, steady, soulful, and quietly irresistible. Their bond began with music, long nights humming melodies that never made it to the radio. But somewhere between the laughter, the harmonies, and the soft strum of his guitar, Dolly found herself pulled into something deeper. Willie touched her like she was a rare song, slowly, respectfully, tenderly, reminding her that intimacy didn't have to burn to leave a mark. He wasn't intensity. He was refuge, a place to rest her heart before the world demanded she carry it again. But just when she thought she had found calm, a wild, outlaw energy stormed into her life next. He hit her world like a match to gasoline. Waylon Jennings wasn't gentle, soft, or patient. He was the outlaw of outlaw country, a man carved from rebellion and rhythm, carrying danger in his voice and temptation in his smile. If Willie was a sunrise, Waylon was midnight on fire. Dolly had seen plenty of bold men in the industry, but Waylon was different. He didn't flirt. He didn't hint. He claimed a room just by walking into it. And Dolly couldn't deny the thrill that shot through her every time his eyes locked onto hers. Their connection wasn't slow or subtle. It was immediate, electric, the kind of pull that made you forget rules, expectations, even good sense. Waylon had a way of letting silence do the talking, leaning in close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Close enough that she knew exactly where things were heading before either of them spoke a word. He was chaos wrapped in leather, a man who loved with the same ferocity he lived. And Dolly, for all her grace, wasn't immune to that danger. Yet the next man who entered her life didn't bring danger. He brought brilliance, poetry, and a different kind of fire altogether. He stepped into her story like a verse she hadn't written yet. Kris Kristofferson wasn't just a man. He was a mind, a poet, a storm of intellect wrapped in rugged masculinity. If Waylon was wildfire, Kris was lightning, brilliant, striking, impossible to ignore. Dolly had always admired talented men, but Kris carried a different spark, the kind that made you lean in without realizing you'd moved. He spoke with a quiet intensity, every word thoughtful, every glance deliberate. And when he sang, it was as if his soul cracked open, letting the world hear the ache, the desire, the dreams he carried like a second heartbeat. Dolly felt that energy instantly. Their chemistry wasn't loud or chaotic. It was magnetic. Two artists drawn together by passion, ambition, and an unspoken understanding of the loneliness that comes with greatness. Their private moments were brief but unforgettable, marked by conversations that melted into touch, poetry that turned into breathless silence. Kris loved like he wrote, honestly, fiercely, beautifully. He was a man who left marks not with fire, but with meaning. And then came someone entirely different, a man whose touch could rewrite the rhythm of her heartbeat with nothing but his hands. He entered her life like a flash of California sunlight. Glen Campbell was golden from the start. Those blue eyes, that easy grin, the effortless charm of a man who didn't just play music. He became it. If Kris was lightning, Glen was the warm glow that followed the storm, the kind of man who could steady a trembling heart with nothing more than a smile. Dolly felt that warmth instantly. Their connection sparked in studios, backstage hallways, and quiet hotel rooms where Glen would bring out his guitar, strumming soft chords that drifted into something far more intimate. His hands, famous for crafting some of the most iconic riffs in American music, held a magic that didn't vanish when the guitar was set aside. With him, even silence felt melodic. Glen wasn't turmoil or rebellion. He was escape, bright, tender, a reminder that affection didn't always have to hurt or burn. He made her feel young, wild in a gentle way, like the world was still wide open. But just as Dolly grew comfortable in that golden glow, life circled her back to the man who shaped her career, and the most complicated love of all. Because next came a name tied to both her rise and her heartbreak. He didn't just walk into her life, he built the stage she stood on. Porter Wagoner was the force that discovered her, shaped her, and pushed her into the national spotlight. But behind the rhinestone suits and TV smiles was a man far more complex, charismatic, and consuming than the public ever realized. If Glen was sunshine, Porter was firelight, warm when you leaned close, but capable of burning if you lingered too long. Dolly learned that truth early. Their chemistry on stage was undeniable, a spark that fans mistook for perfect harmony. But offstage, the lines blurred in ways neither of them could fully control. Porter could be tender one moment, territorial the next, driven by equal parts passion, pride, and the fear of losing the star he helped create. And Dolly, young, ambitious, craving independence, found herself caught between gratitude, desire, and the growing need to break free. Their private moments were as explosive as their creative ones, filled with emotion too tangled to name. Porter was the man who taught her, tested her, and ultimately transformed her. Yet the final name she revealed wasn't tangled in conflict at all. It was a connection built on pure harmony, trust, and irresistible chemistry. He was the calm after every storm she survived. Kenny Rogers didn't enter Dolly's life with chaos or conflict. He arrived with steadiness, charm, and a voice so smooth it felt like silk wrapping around the soul. From the moment they sang together, something shifted. Their harmonies didn't just blend, they fit, in a way that made the world wonder if there was more between them than music. And Dolly, for once, didn't deny it. Kenny had a gentleness that felt rare in the world they lived in. He listened, truly listened, leaning in with those soft eyes that made a woman feel like the only person in the room. Their late-night studio sessions often drifted past music, slipping into conversations about dreams, fears, love, and loss. Somewhere in that quiet, trust turned into touch. Connection became something deeper. With Kenny, intimacy felt safe, uncomplicated, mature, and wrapped in genuine affection. He wasn't a wildfire or a storm. He was a home you walked into without realizing you'd been standing in the cold. But even after all 7 names were spoken, the biggest question remained: why did Dolly finally reveal these secrets at 79? And what did they truly mean to her story? In the end, her confession wasn't about scandal, it was about truth. At 79, Dolly Parton finally chose to peel back the layers of a life lived in spotlight and shadow, revealing the men who shaped her not just as an artist, but as a woman. Each name she spoke carried a memory, storms that swept her away, warmth that healed her, passion that sparked her, and tenderness that held her steady when fame tried to pull her apart. These weren't reckless choices or hidden shame. They were private chapters, protected for decades because they mattered too much to hand over to gossip. And when she finally shared them, it wasn't for drama, it was for understanding. To remind the world that icons aren't carved from marble. They're human, full of longing, joy, mistakes, and moments that shape the songs we love. Dolly's honesty didn't tarnish her legacy. It deepened it. Because a woman who can tell the truth about her past without fear is a woman who has truly lived. And maybe that's the greatest revelation of all.